And
yay! Welcome to the Energy Realities podcast with David Blackmon, Tammy Nemeth, Stu Turley, and me, Irina Slav. And today we're talking about biofuels, a very exciting new or not so new market and a very important part of the energy transition. Tammy, how do you feel about biofuels?
I have mixed emotions about biofuels because on the one hand, I get why there was such a push for it in the early 2000s. There was, it was a time of peak oil. There was a lot of angst in the American government that they were running out and they needed alternatives and find ways to sort of stretch out oil use, as long as possible, the supply. And so if you could water it down a little bit with biofuels, that would buy you time. On the other hand, it takes up space for food production.
Certainly
And
does.
I'm not really sure that it's as helpful with reducing emissions, which is why it's being talked about now. I agree with one of the articles, I forget which one it was, that talked about, once you start with those subsidies and the farmers get used to having those subsidies, it's really difficult to take it back. Because, there's been this investment made and so on in doing this. And so now you get the farmers who are like, wait a second, we've invested in all this stuff and we get these subsidies. We should keep it going, even though technically the US doesn't need it unless it's for emissions. And even then the emissions numbers are questionable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
David, what's your
Yeah.
take?
So we can blame the evil geniuses in the George W. Bush administration for this atrocity. They're the ones that really created the big subsidy programs for biofuels. The Clinton administration had done a little bit on it, but it was really the George W. Bush administration virtue signaling about all this crap. It's just like wind and solar. It's a big cottage industry. A lot of people have invested in it. Their livelihoods depend on it. And the point about the farmers becoming dependent on these subsidies is really phenomenal. There's an extremely popular show that I know Tammy is familiar with in the UK, and it's now on Amazon. It's called Clarkson's Farm. Jeremy Clarkson, the top tier host. Yeah. And it is such and my wife and I have been binging it this past week. It is such a fantastic revelation about how it impacts farmers in Great Britain to be, completely reliant on all these heavy subsidies coming from the EU and all this government controlling what they plant and when they plant it and how they do it and blah, 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 what you can and can't do. You can't even build a road on your own farm now. But it all got taken away, during COVID and right after COVID. All those subsidies got taken away because the conservative government under Boris Johnson said, oh, well, don't worry about it. When we do Brexit, your government will fill in those subsidies. Well, they took them all away during COVID and after COVID. And so now you've got hundreds and hundreds of British farmers either having already failed or on the verge of failure because their whole livelihoods depended on those subsidies. It's the same in the United States. Corn farmers have become completely addicted to these subsidies for biofuels, and not just corn farmers, but other farmers. And so now it's this whole thing. It's this whole big subsidy thing that we're incurring. It's all funded with more and more debt, just like all the subsidies for wind and solar and everything else in this energy transition. And if you take it away, well, what's going to happen? All the family farms that are completely dependent on these subsidies now to stay in business are going to go out of business, and Bill Gates is going to own everything. So and other billionaires and corporations are going to control the whole farming system. So the government is now, they have this problem facing them because we can't afford the subsidies anymore. Really can't. The fuels that are created don't really provide any benefit in terms of the environment at all. None, zero. Some of them are actually actively destructive to the environment. They're all destructive to the food system. But you've got this monster you've created, and whichever president decides, happens to be in office when it all goes away, won't be winning re-election. So it's a real problem here in the U.S., and I know it is in other countries as well. Anyway, everyone should be watching Clarkson's Farm. Because
Yes, absolutely. More
it's
than
incredible.
once.
Yeah.
More than once.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
Very educational. It's very inspirational for me as well, but really educational.
Yeah.
It's quite horrifying.
It
at
is.
times.
Really.
Can I add to that, to the Clarkson's Farm issue in the UK? So the farmers get paid not to plant crops. They get paid only, it's like the EU Green Deal stuff, where they get paid to put in flowers. They get paid to do all of this biodiversity stuff rather than planting crops. You know, they take land out of production in order to put in woodlands or flower banks or whatever. And he kind of talked about that a little bit in the latest season. But anyway, that's
yes, and there was this idea just to continue. It's really fascinating, very interesting. That they're swapping the previous subsidies with ESG subsidies.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie was droning on about it, but we didn't hear it because it wasn't that interesting. What I find most fascinating about biofuels, on top of everything you said, which is a fact, is how I wonder how it fits with these calls for more responsible use of the land, regenerative farming, things like that, not using fertilizers. How does that work if you need to produce a lot of biofuels? So how do you do it if you reduce your fertilizer use and start doing regenerative farming, which produces much lower yields, as we saw in Clarkson's farm? Again, it's paradoxical, isn't it?
It really is. And you're taking so much food out of the food system. And, our exports of grain out of the United States and other countries, Ukraine and all these other countries, really help feed the world and have for decades and decades. And we're in the process of now destroying all that. And it's going to, it's just inevitable. It's going to create an absolute catastrophe, a human life killing catastrophe, if we don't stop and reverse a lot of these policies. And it's just so sad that we don't ever seem able to elect anyone who really understands the problem and wants to correct it.
No,
except Holland now.
Except Holland, and he will be fought tooth and nail by the globalists in the Netherlands government, and we'll see how much progress he's able to make on this front. Hopefully, you will.
Yeah, well, his coalition is with that farmer party.
Yeah,
that's one of the coalition partners, and they were very strong on addressing the agriculture issues that are coming down from the EU. But I don't know what they actually have the power to do, because the EU sends this stuff down. So it'll be interesting.
Well, maybe, how people have been talking about more exits after Brexit. Someone will leave. I mean, how long can you take this? The threats, like Hungary seeing threats, and Poland a while ago. Now the Netherlands, what they're going to threaten with kicking them out, or removing their right to vote on EU matters. Well, of course, the country will leave at some point. I'm just
and that's what it's going to take to end this stuff. To reject those kinds of policy, you can't do it.
It will take a lot more than one country,
right?
I think
It'll take more than one.
They get the message.
It's really
hard.
Is
it Hotel California? You can come in but never leave.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
Especially with tax revenue.
What's that, Stu?
Yeah.
Especially with tax revenue.
Yeah.
Don't leave with your tax revenue.
Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you, biofuels, I absolutely love the idea. The implementation under George W. Bush was horrific. That man should be tried and put in prison because of this. And let's take just a Buick.
That was Stu Turley who said that. STU.
Anyway. My middle name is Pid. So
for those of you at the NSA.
Stu Pid. But when you sit back and take a look at ethanol, I had, Ford or a Buick Enclave. I get 25 miles per gallon running on that without having ethanol. You throw ethanol into that bad dog, it's it drops down to about 21 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
Ethanol in that car does not run very well. Ethanol costs more energy to make. It is worse on the environment. It ruins crop grounds. There is nothing good about ethanol. Now, that's one biofuel. Let me go on a half of them. I'm going to do my best David Blackmon rant this morning.
Uh-oh.
I have, it's like, buckle up. If we went to landfills, and I'm working with Deborah Wald and Green Lily Energy on her new podcast coming out. We're now going into production on it, and they have patents that allow for renewing of taking almost, it's trash to treasure. It's almost anything for renewable and turning it into biofuels, into turning it in, taking even recycling windmill blades. They can do anything, and this is pretty cool technology that they've been able to do. So to me, biofuels means landfill, and not like in New Delhi, where they have the largest landfill fire in the world going on right now. And this
Is it still going on?
My God,
Pardon?
that's still going on?
Yes.
Holy cow.
It is horrific. I saw the video on it yesterday, and it is absolutely horrific. This thing is horrible. Landfill renewable natural gas and or biofuels from farm equipment. I'm all in. That to me is biofuels. Taking good, healthy farm grain and turning it, using energy to put into ethanol to destroy engines, means absolute. That's something that somebody from Oklahoma University would do. Oh, wait, did I just say that on the air? Sorry. I went to the other school, State University, the one that actually loves animals.
And then, did you hear the news about biofuel refiners having to shut down their refineries because there's not enough demand? And the hilarious part that some former oil refiners who converted their refineries to biofuel plants are now converting back to oil.
Yeah. I mean, it's not profitable. It's not a profitable business.
Yeah.
And there was a big refinery in Philadelphia that had been there for 70, 80 years that shut down a few years ago because they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford to make the biofuels required. And it's this whole scam with, if you make biofuels at your refinery, you get credits, to offset your emissions. And so it's one of these emissions offsetting scams that the government set up. And it's just a terrible burden on these independent refiners, who aren't owned by giant international corporations like Shell and ExxonMobil and others, who can be profitable because they spread the costs out over their whole refining line. But for independent refiners, what's that?
Like car makers, they cover their
Right.
EV losses with internal combustion engine car sales.
Right, exactly. And the fully integrated companies can not only spread it across, multiple refineries, but also, up all the way back up the whole supply chain. And so it's for the independent refiners in the United States. It's always the independents who get killed by stuff like this.
Of course, right? Because they're smaller. They can't find back. So
they can't absorb it. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, there's also the issue of like the biodiesel doesn't, if you add these the ethanol and whatnot into fuel, it doesn't last as long. Then you have to put a biocide into the fuel because it won't last, and there's mold and water and algae kind of stuff. I don't know, stuff built up in there.
Yeah.
Which is just disgusting. Because like before, you were able to leave your lawnmower over the winter, no big deal. And now with if it's a blended fuel, you have to flush it or you have to put a biocide in over the winter and stuff like that. So you end up having to use more chemical to keep it running longer. And I thought it was also a little bit hard on engines, but I don't know. I don't have the data to back that up.
Probably it is, because it was a running joke when The Walking Dead was on TV. And they kept driving these cars 2 years after the apocalypse. And viewers were livid about it because with all the biofuels in the petrol and the diesel, they wouldn't start. The cars
Right.
wouldn't
They wouldn't
start
run,
2
yeah.
years after
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stu.
Oh, I don't know. I thoroughly enjoy lobbing that conversation out there to just get you guys fired up on a Monday morning. My day is made.
It is
Well,
very
Tom Mumford really enjoyed your rants too. He had a comment there. Look, I think we're both trying to. There we go. Right on. How can anyone take these greenies seriously when they won't address India and China? Of course, and
well,
they
we
never
can't
will.
force them to do anything.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
like they can't force you to do anything. So.
But of course, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Everyone knows it, but they won't address India and China because the
But
bottom
you have
line,
limits, David. You're
Right,
a
I have
conspiracy
limits.
theorist with
but I have
limits.
limits. I like the conspiracies I can see actually functioning in action today, which is the real true goal of the climate alarm lobby that's pushing this transition is to deindustrialize the Western world, which they're having great success doing in Europe, especially, and make us all reliant on China and to a lesser extent, India in the long
But
term.
we are already reliant.
Right. And we're going to become increasingly reliant as we go to renewables because China controls all the supply chains for all of the minerals that go into all the renewables. It's going to control the EV market. It's already making great inroads into Europe and will be in the United States soon. And so that's really the bottom line goal here is to turn the whole Western world into a giant nature park and shift all the industry and emissions to India and China. And that's exactly what's happening. You can see it in action. And as I always say, a conspiracy theory is not a theory when it's standing in front of you, slapping your stupid face. And that's what's happening right now.
That's a wife.
I actually
Yeah.
agree with you, but I don't think it's deliberate. I think they genuinely think they're doing good.
Well, I think the policymakers, most of them do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
because
there's
I
a
agree.
mix.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
Yeah,
be
it's a
able to
mix.
do it if you didn't have the people who were believers.
Right.
That that this was.
But they're
something
making
good,
the
right?
decisions. They're actually, you can see them, those European members of parliament, they genuinely believe it. And they have the power to make decisions affecting each and every one of us. And
Right.
they are sure they're doing good. And they're worried that this populist right-wing wave that's coming for us, for them actually, in June is a very bad thing. Yeah. So
I'm going to
why
steal that one, Tom. I'm stealing this from Tom Mumford. I'm a pattern recognizer. There we go.
Not conspiracy theorist, pattern recognizer.
There we
I love
go.
that.
Yeah.
There's a clear
Yeah.
pattern going on here, folks.
Well, you know what the difference between a conspiracy theory and reality is right now, guys?
3 to 6 months.
1 week.
2 weeks.
1 week. We're down to 1 week.
So the time frame keeps getting shorter and shorter, doesn't it?
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert.
So I was wondering if the US federal government is so much in favor of biofuels, why didn't they give biofuel producers the quotas, the blending mandates they wanted?
Yeah.
Could there be some rudimentary caution or something?
It was
I'm
probably
sure
just
the EU,
politically
actually, I think they're shrinking biofuel production.
right. It's all a political calculation. It was probably an election year when it came up, and what enough people
to keep
willing to take
everyone-
the political hit. Yeah.
Hey, David, real quick, I think we have a video of the effects of those energy policies on consumers. You want me to show you that one clip that we have?
Absolutely.
This is actually a very important clip that we have. David, this is an amazing effect. There's second order effects on this one. And if we're going to set this up, this is the average consumer, according to the biofuel.
Sir, show that knight who's boss.
Oh my God.
Oh, that just makes both of my teeth hurt.
Man, that's brutal.
That's not funny at all.
It's really not.
Oh, shall we do headlines?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think we've destroyed biofuels here, so let's go to headlines.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, these are mine?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Free solar for farmers.
Yeah, free solar. I actually did a Substack today on this topic. I was planning on doing something else, but this really caught my attention. It starts with the touching story of a chicken farmer who installed $300,000 worth of solar panels on his farm, and it came free because of all the subsidies, all the tax incentives that got piled up, and he didn't pay anything for it. But apparently, these subsidies in the form of tax credits are becoming very, very popular because you can sell them. If you want to put a solar installation on your house or whatever, and you don't want to pay for it, and you don't want to wait until the government gives you the money, because they only give it to you after you've installed it, after you've paid for it and installed it. So you can sell the credits that go with the installation to any company willing to buy it and reduce its its tax liability. So it got me wondering how many companies will be reducing their tax burden by buying these credits at a discount, by the way.
Yeah.
And what happens with tax revenues?
Yeah. Good
It
question.
turns out that the government is funding the transition directly and indirectly, almost entirely. And if they think this is public-private partnerships that will stimulate investment in the transition, that's not investment. That's reducing your tax load and making a profit because of these discounts. I saw this really, really peculiar way of investing, calling it.
Yeah.
How do they verify the tax credits? Do they have to be registered with an authorized party?
Probably. But this tax credit trading, there are already marketplaces who put buyers and sellers in contact with each other. The very fact that you want to build a solar farm, a solar installation on your farm, already grants you right to certain tax incentives that you can sell.
Yeah.
This is
So
one of the biggest problems that really gets me worked up, if you can imagine that. Land reclamation for renewable energy. I mean, this absolutely drives me nuts. I am seeing part of my day job is deal evaluations in oil and gas, and now looking at deal evaluations in wind and solar and those things. Well, can I take 1 second and brag on David? I mean, compliment David. No, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. I want to show this one film real quick while I jump in and be rude.
This is wind. Yeah.
This is wind, but it is actually, take a look at this hole in the ground. Look at the amount of steel. Look at the amount of land reclamation on this. And wind farms don't last the 30 years. They don't last. No. Solar farms don't last 30 years. They barely last 7. If they last 7, then they have to be redone and then refinanced, and then consumers get to pay for it again. $800,000 just to remove one of these stupid things.
That's one. Yeah.
And usually the landowners.
Yes.
And then the landowners are usually left with the bill to reclaim it. And that's what's happened in Canada, where they sign these agreements or whatever. And in the small print, it says if the company goes bankrupt or whatever, the landowner is responsible for cleaning it up. And I mean, all of a sudden the farmers are like, what? What do you mean I have to pay to clean this up now? And where do you dispose of it, right? Because there's no big place like, I'm glad, Stu, that this company is going to be able to maybe recycle the turbine blades and whatnot, but how do you get it there? And how many of those
Exactly. It's
places
the
are there?
money.
And what
It's
happens with the rest of it? Blades
Right.
are blades, but the rest with the
Right.
column, the foundation, what do we do with all these? These are tons of concrete.
Well, and the thing about the concrete foundations is the only regulations that exist in most states in the United States is they have to be covered up by at least 3 feet of dirt, which in theory, if a farming operation, once you tear down the towers and haul them off, although nobody's got plans to do that really, because there's no regulation forcing it. But if you do that, farming operations typically don't plow down below 3 feet. So that's kind of so those concrete foundations are going to be there forever. Okay. They're never going away out of any of these wind farms. One point about that particular video was that tower was only about 150 feet tall. So it's a small one. These are small ones. They're up to 700 feet tall. So if you had a 700-foot one, you're going to have to proportionally make it that much bigger and deeper and use, I don't know how many times more rebar and concrete in a foundation for that. It's going to look like a skyscraper foundation in downtown Houston. Yeah. So these things are popping up everywhere. They're all over the country. The waste disposal of the towers and the turbines and the blades is already an enormous problem in states that are home to significant wind operations, and they're only going to get bigger because, I had one booster of wind on LinkedIn yesterday claiming, well, we recycle the turbines and the blades. Well, no, you don't, because we've got all these videos now and articles in liberal publications like Texas Monthly documenting all the damn graveyards out there, surface yards, I'm sorry, not graveyards, out there in West Texas, all over the landscape now. And they're just piling up and piling up and piling up. And they're not going to be recycled because there's billions of dollars that have to be invested to do that. And no one wants to invest in that. Okay. And even if you do invest in it, you're not going to be able to sell most of the recycled product you get out of a facility. So there's no market for it. There's no investment for it. And this is just going to be a huge problem because none of the state governments in the United States of America have appropriate regulatory structures requiring the proper disposal and remediation of these sites.
Can I add something about the concrete platform? So with the new International Sustainability Standards Board, sustainability and climate related financial disclosures, they mandate the use of the SASB industry-based guidelines. And in those industry-based guidelines, the wind projects do not have to account for the emissions in that concrete base.
Right.
So oil and gas companies have to account for all the emissions in their operations, in their reserves, and all that kind of stuff, which is crazy, to account for as part of your absolute emissions, your reserves, like really. But the wind projects don't, it's specifically excluded. The foundation and the transport of the turbine to the location where they will be erected. So it's like this skewing of an investor decision making towards wind projects because their emissions number will be so much lower than anything else with respect to energy.
Yeah, and it's just, and it's anyway, wind needs to go away. Solar's a lot less of a problem because you don't have big foundations like that under the ground. The first hailstorm comes through, it's going to destroy all those solar panels, and you can just tear it down and cart it off. And so, but the one last question I have about this, Irina, I wonder if there's an answer somewhere. Since the farmers are getting these solar installations free of charge, who becomes liable for taking all that down when the hailstorm comes through and destroys
it? That's a great question. I have no idea.
Liable? And
the contract that I'm seeing, guys, is that I think Tammy had mentioned that or alluded to it, and that is if the company is still in business, I think this is
which most of them won't be, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tom again. Shout out to Tom. Well, blaming fine print is ridiculous. Not reading the fine print is illogical. We're all adults and should always read the fine print on major decisions. I quit doing that after I said I do, or lawyer up after signing. Yeah, I did, and she's still in control. Did I just say that?
No comment on that.
Yeah, no, and as well she should be, my beloved wife.
Wait, we need to go back because Irina has one more story.
She has one more story.
Oh,
But that was just for fun, really.
This
But
one?
it is funny. A Trump presidency would risk $1 trillion in clean energy investment, said Wood Mac. That's actually
what has happened to Wood?
advertisement for Trump, because when they say investments, they mean subsidies.
Yes.
That are coming out of your pocket.
It's just so, and Wood Mac's not the only one, but I like to pick on them because they're so public about it. All these, not all of them, but many of these big consulting firms that traditionally have consulted in the energy space have just gone full woke, and you end up with this kind of headline on the story.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
they've already calculated it.
And they're really behind the curve here, folks. For those of you with Wood Mac, I want you to understand this all is starting to reverse. Okay, this energy transition is not going to succeed. It's going to be a major unmitigated disaster. And you guys are headed in the wrong direction. The direction's now about here, and it's going back this way. And that's because of science and physics. And it's not going to be reversed. So
and fiscal
it's time to start changing the rhetoric here.
I'd like to throw one more squirrel in there on your comment. It's science, physics, and fiscal irresponsibility can only be, kept up for so long.
Right. Anyway, I'm terrible. I shouldn't have said that, but it is what it is. It's out there now, my God.
Me at international. I wonder who this LinkedIn user is. Tammy, you lost me at the international sub. This isn't me. Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not sure what that means.
I don't either, but it was funny. I like yada, yada, yada.
Too many big words? I don't know.
Biofuels.
Okay, so these are my stories. The one on the left is the feds give financial boost to biofuel sector amid growing U.S. competition. So this is Canada. And in the latest budget, they're putting, I think it's something like almost 1.3 billion towards building new biofuel facilities throughout Canada. And they dispersed up to 500 million. And they're saying they can pay for it by collecting from clean fuel regulation compliance payments. Okay, they're going to tax people for not being clean enough and then use that to fund biofuels. I don't know, something like that. But what stood out for me in this article was that they're talking about how biofuels can be made from lots of different materials like corn or vegetable oils like canola or animal fats. Yeah. And the animal fat one caught my eye because when you look at these new wood windmills that they're building, these new blades that are made out of wood, I was like, okay, so what's the resin that they're using to preserve this wood? And it turns out that they're using various like coconut oil and animal fats that they're incorporating into the wood.
It's sustainable.
It's just
right, but the thing is, okay, so then you're
going to kill all the animals.
Food supply.
You might as well use all the animals that they're going to get rid of, and,
right.
and
I think
it's a great idea.
You can't eat it, but we'll use it for wind turbines. Anyway. So Canada wants to invest a bunch in this biofuel sector because when they're banning the internal combustion engine, they are allowing hybrids to continue. And I think they're going to try and go like Germany, where Germany said, we don't want to ban the internal combustion engine, but we want to be able to use biofuels or sustainable fuels or something like that. So maybe that's why they're they're big in subsidizing the biofuels aspect. And then the other article is in the UK, and it's North Sea. Chevron has pulled out. They were like one of the first big companies to develop the North Sea, and they're pulling out. And they pulled out the day after a big meeting was held between Shell and Ithaca and BP, and I forget, there was an Harbor Energy. And because they were trying to pressure the government to lessen its windfall tax. Because right now the windfall tax on North Sea developments and production is 75%.
Whoa.
So, and it's extended out to like 2027. I'm like, what do you think, the war is going to go on until 2027? Because that was the excuse for why they needed this windfall tax. And so the next day, Chevron said, that's it, we're done in the North Sea. But then they said, oh, but it wasn't about the windfall tax. We're just looking at, where investment is best made and so on. And we've decided North Sea isn't it. Yeah. But it begs the question. So why is the North Sea not
what's the biggest factor? Yeah, the windfall tax is the biggest factor in that, right?
Right. But they were dancing around. Like, oh, no, it's not the windfall. Well, why can't you just say it? Why can't they say
just say it? Be honest, people. Be blunt.
Be honest. Yeah.
Lord.
And they deserve it.
But I suspect if Labor gets in, and it's likely they're going to get in, they're talking about nationalization and shutting it down and everything else. So
this is great. They will lose any sort of revenue from North Sea oil and gas.
But it's dirty, right? In their minds, dirty dollars. It's dirty. So.
Yeah, I need to go get a shower after this conversation.
Cannot make this stuff up, folks.
No, I'm feeling dirty after this one. Did I just finish this? Sorry, did I?
You said it out loud.
Okay.
Oh boy, these are mine. So, and this the one on the left here, new report reveals just how energy rich America really is. Is from the Institute for Energy Research. My friends over there, Dan Kish and Tom Pyle, who's the president of that wonderful think tank in Washington, D.C. They published a new report last week showing just exactly how energy rich, and I would use the term energy dominant, the United States of America is in oil, gas, and coal. We have enough coal reserves for 900 proven coal reserves, which means the ones we've already begun tapping, 934 years at current usage rates. Natural gas, 130 years in proven reserves, and something like 1,000 years in reserves in place if only 50% of them end up becoming economic in the coming years, and oil reserves for 3 centuries, and it's just we have more reserve, double the amount of reserves in place that Saudi Arabia does in oil. Far more natural gas than any combination of countries on the face of the earth that you want to name. And our government, our current administration, seems to be focused and very intent upon squandering them and leaving them in the ground. And no other country on earth, I would submit to you, other than possibly the UK, Tammy, sorry for picking on the UK, would even dream of leaving that kind of enormous mineral wealth in place for posterity, and
don't leave
it's economically insane for the United States to think.
Tammy's feeling a little bit slighted that you're just dissing the UK and not dissing Canada. I mean, Canada wants to leave.
No, listen, man, Canada's an oil powerhouse. Despite Trudeau's rhetoric,
they used to be. They're wanting to leave it in.
No, man, that new pipeline, think of all the additional productions coming out of the oil sands now because of that new pipeline going out the Pacific coast. Canada's a powerhouse, and California, there's a lot of restrictions.
But they want a production cap. They want a production cap.
Yeah, but if they do that, they know they're going to lose the election. So they're probably going to lose it anyway.
Well,
so
let them do it.
Yeah. Let them do it. Please. Yes, please, Justin, do it.
Well, they're talking about Mark Carney taking over from Trudeau.
Oh, my God.
Which would be
what's the lady's name that's the economy minister? What's her name?
Chrystia Freeland, our finance minister.
finance. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, so she
like
and
that
Carney
get-
were on the board of directors for the World Economic Forum. She's still on there, but Carney left about 8 months ago as he was prepping to take over the Liberal Party, I think.
Oh man.
Probably.
Wow. Anyway, it's just, I know it's worse in the United States, but still, it's just hard to imagine how people, so obviously phony and destructive keep falling up in life and getting increasingly powerful jobs in life. Anyway, DeSantis signs a law slashing climate agenda directives, targeting adversary investments. Ron DeSantis, the greatest governor in the United States of America today, signed a wonderful energy bill towards the end of last week that almost eliminates the discussion of climate change from Florida's regulatory structure. It outlaws the placement of offshore
I wonder why I
wind
heard all these
farms
heads
anywhere in
popping.
state waters. Yeah,
I heard all these heads
anywhere in
popping
state waters.
around you.
And it incentivizes natural gas and power generation and nuclear and power generation. And of course, the climate alarm lobby went insane and the news media attacked him on every front you can imagine. The the Washington Post, my favorite deal was from the Washington Post, which writes that DeSantis's new law, energy laws, put the focus for power generation back onto reliability and affordability, two very popular right-wing talking points. Okay, so reliability and affordability. Yes. At the Washington Post, it all boils down to reliability and affordability and power generation, which were the objectives and should still be the objectives for decades and decades, are now nothing more than right-wing talking points.
They're problematic. Reliability and affordability are problematic.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Wow.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane through the looking glass kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you and congratulations to Governor DeSantis for signing those bills.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, our hearts and prayers go out to all the folks in Houston this weekend.
Yes.
Was it David? I believe between Louisiana and Houston on Friday. I watched it all weekend. We had a 1.2 million to 1.3 million people without power on Houston in Texas and Louisiana, and as of this morning, we still have 230,000 people without power. And there were some high winds that came through and took out major grid sections. So I want to go on a soapbox for just 1 second. Please, everybody prepare for either man-made or natural disasters. Get a little Jackery. It's the brand that I use. They're not sponsoring the show or anything, but $200, $300 for a small electrical generator and a little generator to, the solar panel. That's actually a great use for the solar and those things. Get a little bit of security for your house. Have a plan, have a 72-hour bag, and just have basic supplies for tornadoes. We've had a lot of tornadoes. We've had a lot of disasters, and there's a lot of grid instabilities coming around the corner for many reasons. So everybody, please just take care. And I have to give a handout, hug alignment. If you have power, hug alignment, not when he's working, but wait till he gets to his truck and then give them a hug and everything else. So, David, on this had a lot of things going on this. This was just out of the blue, straight winds, high winds.
Yeah, hurricane force.
And it was,
Houston's a tough place to live sometimes in the spring, particularly when you get into late spring like this. It's weather can be incredible down there.
It is. And the cockroaches, when I worked out of there for quite a while, and the cockroaches are so big that I trained one of them to get a beer. It's pretty impressive, the size of those things. Let me go over here to this one. Low carbon fuel groups in U.S. prompt issuance of tax credit guidance. And Tammy, this one has a lot to do with the neutral production credit represents the first time in federal tax incentive based on life cycle greenhouse gas emission rates to incentivize domestic production of fuels. It's unbelievable. And Canada is now having to interact with this and going, hey, that's not right. So anyway, let's see here. This is a great comment. I enjoy. This is from David Alieto. I hope I got your name right, David. Enjoy listening to the different feedback from everyone. My question: are there any solutions that work, or do they all have problems?
Solutions to what?
Nuclear fission. It works. We know it works.
Solutions to what?
Yeah.
Energy transition alternatives,
Yeah.
I think, is probably what he's
stop subsidizing these monstrous wind farms.
Yes.
I would like to say a balanced diet of energy is what we need. We need to use all forms of energy as far as I'm concerned. I'm energy agnostic from the standpoint of let's deliver the lowest kilowatt per hour to everyone on the planet with the least amount of impact on the environment and not printing money. That means that natural gas is good. Coal is good if it's used, correctly, and you can start learning to use some of those things. One of the things that just drives me nuts, guys, is the whole simple fact that we should not be dictating from the West to Africa. Why in the world should we force them to go to renewable energy when it's not fiscally sustainable?
Especially when we're not forcing India and China to do it. I mean, India and China are just going.
Well, because you can't force them, David.
Right,
That's
you
why
can't
you
force them. Exactly. Well, exactly.
Well, and China's doing what Stu pointed out. They're doing everything.
Yes.
Exactly.
They've got the wind, the solar, the coal, the natural gas, the nuclear. They're building more of everything. And what are we doing? We're saying, no, you can't do this, can't do that. Right. I mean, are there any solutions that work? If you're talking about emissions, if that's the big elephant, whatever that they want to talk about is emissions, the problem is it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work, but they want to swap everything over before they've worked out what does work. And so by taking out stuff that's reliable and affordable and efficient, before there's a replacement ready, then that creates a big problem for how people live. And it goes to what David had been saying earlier in the discussion, that it ends up making people poor. If people are poor, they really don't care about the environment. They care about surviving. And when you're in survival mode, then you're not really caring about other stuff. So if we have, reliable, affordable energy, that gives us the time and the leisure to worry about things like the environment.
Yeah.
I think David does have a good point here, and he says new massive data centers are the major users in energy. David, I think, has got a very strong point, and that is that we are going to see more natural gas generation kicking in because of AI and data centers. And the demand for the EIA put out, and David, I have to fact check myself, which is normal. Wives do a great job of fact checking, their husbands, and at least they should. And we need more energy. The EIA says that we have never seen this big of an energy increase in 20% in years. And I mean, if we don't go all in on natural gas plants, we will have an increase in deindustrialization with carbon increase. So
I'm going to even go further than you, Stu.
okay.
I'm going to say we are within the next 2-3 years in the United States going to stop retiring coal plants because we won't be able to afford to. And we may even find a way to start permitting the building of new coal plants in certain situations because we're going to have it to keep grid reliability a thing. And it's mainly going to be driven by just what David Alioto says. AI data centers are proliferating all over the country. They are incredible energy hogs, and we're not going to be able to meet those power demands with you just can't. Solar and wind and battery centers are okay. I mean, they're a niche product that provides some pretty good generation during certain parts of the day when the weather's right. But we're going to have to double and triple the size of our grid, the generation capacity of our grid. And we just going to have to, like Stu says, keep building gas plants. And I believe we're going to see situations where we're going to permit the building of new coal plants in the coming years as well, because we have so much of it. First of all, it's economically insane not to take advantage of that incredible energy resource wealth. And we're already taking out 99% of the real pollutants produced by modern coal plants today. Yeah. So, and eventually the world's going to stop focusing on fake pollution and refocus on real pollution. And that is when the United States and other countries will again start taking advantage of their coal resources.
Can I add to that, David? Because when we talk about the energy requirements for AI and data centers, what are we using the AI and data centers for? Because on the one hand, we're all told we have to change our life to not use as much energy. But in the next breath, they're like, well, we need to build more energy so we can have AI and data centers. Right. For what? If we're not allowed to live our lives using reliable, affordable energy, then why the heck should we be building new power plants for AI and data centers? Unless, what are they for?
To teach us how to conserve energy and use less of it. For all those smart meters that are going to be mandatory, probably.
Well, I'll tell you what some of them are for. In Northern Virginia, Dominion Energy said it's going to have to keep a nuclear plant online, or Constellation, I think it was. They're going to have to keep a nuclear plant online that they were planning to retire just to supply the power needs of, I think it's 5 data centers in Northern Virginia. Well, think about who's in Northern Virginia, folks.
Yeah.
All the alphabet agencies of the intelligence community, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and all the other intelligence agencies of the United States are in Northern Virginia. So what's that AI going to be used for? It's going to be used for spying on all of us. Okay. That's what it's going to be used for. And it's going to double the amount of power generation needed in the state of Virginia. Priorities. That's right.
How dare you keep that stove on?
Absolutely. Yeah.
No natural gas stove for you. No air conditioning. No air conditioning.
So was the Seinfeld has a new stove Nazi now? Was it
the Seinfeld? Oh my God!
I love that.
I can't believe I didn't think of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, the stove Nazi. David, I love that Seinfeld episode. No soup for you.
It's a classic.
How can you remember it? Yeah, it is.
All right. We had a lot of great comments today, guys. You guys did great. Oh, hey.
Don't you have another video to show?
Yeah. Tammy, do you play, does your husband play jokes on you at all?
He knows better not to.
Here's why. Let's take a look at this. This one was pretty fun.
Okay.
Your wife.
No, you're not sorry.
No, you're not sorry. Okay, never do that to your wife, guys. I just want to give you a safety tip because it hurts.
I love how she claimed at the end that she hit him in the leg.
No,
It's
I
an
love
intro
it in the video and seeing it. She's doing this. That was real. I mean, that was not a setup. But boy, that guy really got her. So anyway, you guys are rock stars.
Thank you, everyone, with your comments.
Thanks, everybody.
Really appreciate it and questions.
Thanks. It was a great discussion. Have a great week.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye
all.
bye.